Alright, for this video I want to go over a sample earned income credit for the 2023 tax year, and specifically with this example we're going to look at a taxpayer who's filing as head of household and she has 2 qualifying children. That's going to impact the amount of EIC she can claim. So we've got the full 1040 here for her, so we'll go through all of these pieces, and then we do have the IRS publication 596 for the earned income credit. And this is important because we'll need it to reference the tables. And then lastly, just one slide covering some background on the EIC and then the fact pattern that we're going to be looking at here. So the EIC, for those of you familiar, it's a credit, a tax credit available at the federal level, and it's for taxpayers that are living and working in the U.S. And so in order to claim this, you need to have at least some earned income. So even $1 of earned income is required in order to even be eligible for this. Now generally it's going to benefit the lower to middle income taxpayers that have children, and that's the EIC that is, and that's because the more children you have, generally it increases not only the income level phase outs but the amount of the credit itself. Now the credit is driven by a couple of items, right? So obviously the amount of earned income you have, the amount of investment income you have is important because it impacts your overall AGI, and that's part of the calculation. But investment income can also be problematic if your total investment income is too high. So if you have investment income exceeding $11,000 for the year, you're not eligible for the EIC anymore. All right. Now the EIC tables basically consolidate all filers that are going to have 3 or more qualifying children. So in other words, whether you have 3 children, 4, 5, or 6, the EIC table is going to use the same amount as if you had just 3. Now in contrast, when we talk about the child tax credit, there's really no limits on the number of qualifying children you can have. If you have 6 children, you have potentially 6 times 2,000, so 12,000 of eligible credit, obviously subject to all the phase outs. But so that's one of the big distinctions between the 2 credits here. Now the credit amount, it's calculated on both your earned income and your total AGI, and then it's generally just going to be the lesser of those 2 amounts, and so that's why you have to do the calculation twice, and we'll see that on the worksheet. Alright, so let's look at our fact pattern here. We've got Emily Q, taxpayer. She is filing as head of household, and she has 2 children that live with her on a full-time basis. So her son Brian is 5, and she has a daughter Sarah who is 9, and both children are her dependents, and no other person can claim them as dependents on their taxes. Now as far as her income, she has W-2 wages of $50,600, and she has some interest and dividend income in a brokerage account totaling $54. So let's have a look at the return, and then we'll look at these EIC tables and see how we're arriving at these EIC amounts. So if we look at our return here, we'll start with page 1. So we've got her dependents listed here in the dependent section. So include the first name, last name. They need to have a valid Social Security number in order to be able to claim this. If you don't, then the IRS won't allow it. They'll just reject the return. Now the child tax credit, she's also going to be claiming the CTC for this, but that's covered in a separate video. I'll put a link to that below so you can check that out. We're just going to focus on the EIC amount for this video tutorial. So we've got her income up here. So these are earned income, right? Her W-2 wages, $50,600, and then we can see the investment income here on lines 2B and 3B, totaling the $54. So her total AGI is $50,654, and after claiming the standard deduction for head of household filing status, it leaves her with taxable income of $29,854, and total taxes on that is $3,265. So now once she's got those elements computed, she can figure out how much of the EIC I can claim. So if we look at her schedule EIC to start, so this has to be completed anytime that you're going to be claiming the EIC and you're claiming a qualifying child. If you have no qualifying children, you don't need the schedule EIC. But in this case, she has two. so she needs to include it. So you have a separate column for each child here. So we have first and last name, their social security numbers, date of birth, just the year of birth is required on this form. And the reason for that is it prompts further questions about whether they're a college student or permanently or totally disabled, because generally you're looking at kids under 19, but they can be under 24 if they're a student, right? So if they're a full-time college student, perhaps, then the age limit is increased. But in this case, you'll notice here on line 3 in italics, it asks if we were born after 2004 and the child is younger than you can skip lines 4A and 4B and just go to 5. And so that's what we're doing for both children, because they're born after 2004. So we've got the relationship to the taxpayer filing the return, and then the number of months that they both lived with their mother during the year. All right, so now once that schedule is completed, we can then look at the EIC worksheets and then the tables. So the Earned Income Credit worksheet, there's really two pieces here. So there's the Earned Income Credit worksheet where we calculate the EIC amount on the earned income and then the total AGI. But if you have any kind of investment income, you need to do the investment income worksheet first to make sure that you aren't completely barred from claiming the EIC. So in this worksheet, what it does is summarizes all of the investment income that Emily has. And you'll notice up here, we just have a little bit of interest and dividend income. And so the total amount of investment income for this taxpayer on line 11 is $54. And so the final question asked on this worksheet is, well, is that amount more than $11K? Because if it is, you can't claim the credit. But in this case, no. The answer is no. We don't have more than $11,000 of investment income, so we can continue on to claim the EIC amount. So if we look at the Earned Income Credit worksheet, line 1, we're starting with the total compensation. So there's the $50,600 of earned wages. She doesn't have any kind of Medicare waiver payments, or she's not self-employed, so these line items are blank for us. So the total compensation that we're working with here is just the $50,600. So this is the first base point that we use to look up the EIC amount using the tables. So if we go to the EIC tables, and so the publication, and we jump down to the tables, we need to look up the $50,600 number. And so the way these worksheets operate is you're looking for the income within the ranges here in these columns, and then you move from left to right depending on how many qualifying children you have, and then what is your filing status. So if we jump down to $50,600, I'll scroll through pretty quickly here. So $50,600, we're going to be up over here in this range, right? So $50,600 to $50,650, right? And then we can see we're working in this column. We have single, head of household, or qualifying survivor. So we've got $50,600, and we move over to column 2, right? So number 2 means 2 qualifying children. And so the value that we see there is $483. Okay, so she gets a credit of $483 initially based on head of household, this level of income, and having 2 qualifying children. Now notice, if she didn't have 2 children, if she only had 1, with this level of income, she wouldn't get any credit, right? Because the 1 qualifying child column for this amount of income is 0. So no earned income credit if Emily had just the 1 child and not 2. So if we go back to the worksheet, we can enter 483. So that was the first number we looked up. Now we need to test the total AGI. So we look at our AGI from line 11. So that's page 1 of the 1040. We go down to line 11 and we find 50,654. So we go back to the worksheet here, 50,654, and then now we go back to the EIC tables and look up the value for this amount. So we go back to publication 596, we're looking up $50,654. So we're within this range right here. So 50,650 to 50,700. So move from left to right, and we find ourselves at $472. So 472 is the value on that AGI. And so now we ask ourselves the questions prompted in lines 8 and 9. And so line 8 is asking, is line 7 less than either of these amounts? In our case, no. So no. So we looked up the amount on line 7 and entered that there. The line 9 question here, earned income credit, if we checked yes on line 8, enter the amount from line 6. If we checked no, which is what we did here, on line 8, enter the smaller of line 6 or line 8. So we've got line 6, line 8. The smaller amount here is going to be the $472. So that's the credit that Emily is going to be able to claim on her 1040. So if we go to her Form 1040, line 27, we have one qualifying child, so we are attaching Schedule EIC. But line 27, the EIC amount is $472. Now, notice in this return again, she is claiming the child tax credit up here on line 19, so she's including the 8812, and we have the additional child tax credit as well, the $735 figure, and that was covered in a separate video. I'll put that in a link to. I'll put that link in the description below if you want to view that as well. Alright, so that covers it for this tutorial. I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment below. I try to get to as many of those as I can, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Thank you.